Good afternoon. Welcome everybody to a very exciting lineup of speakers on something that's very important to the world, to the planet, as well as us, which is sustainability. So as part of SOMAR and the focus, actually the world is giving sustainability. The International Market Research Day, the topic was sustainability, and India has really taken a front lead in hosting this. We had a panel yesterday. I hope many of you got a chance to see that panel. It'll be on YouTube shortly, so if you've missed it, it'll be nice to see that. We had eminent speakers talking about how is it important to the world, to their own businesses, how to build profitable brands, as well as how it fits in with the consumers. I think it's fair to say that within MRSI itself, we had a lot of excitement about running this day, and mutually there were lots of people who came together to actually set it in motion. So I'm Paru Minocha from Kantar, Shubhadeep, as well as Prashant were part of the team, and Mithali and Diana who set this up. And I hope you learn from the amazing case studies that we are going to see, and that is something that we do more and more of in the Insight world. Thank you.
It was great, Paru. I'll just have a couple of words for the entire set of speakers that they are today lined up. Brilliant set of papers. Conscious consumerism has really taken off. In fact, the core and heart of brands have now become about humanized growth. It's gone beyond the corporate responsibilities into embedding it in the heart of brands. Given that we have realized as insights professionals and as marketeers that consumers, the word value has got reframed. And a lot today is dependent on how this conscious consumerism overall has grown. It was erstwhile Gen Z led, but today it's all of us who are looking at society, who's looking at environment beyond just simple growth. And that's what is important. And it is about a new term has probably got coined today called atomic sustainability, which is about little pieces of work that we do, but continuously. And that's where I think each of us have to contribute as citizens, as individuals, as global citizens. And the most interesting part is that the inciting work that we are doing today, whether it's in the space of consumer inciting or the insight fraternity overall, how we have become inclusive in the way we are dealing with, how our insights have become actionable so that the brands can pick that up. And I think today we will see a reflection of all of that in the 6 interesting papers that will follow. Thank you.
Thank you, Paru. Thank you, Shubhadeep, for opening the session. We'll proceed with the first one, and we have Tripti with us from Ipsos, who is Research Director. We'll start with the first presentation. Tripti, please stay with us for the Q&A.
Greetings. Thank you for joining. At the onset, I take this opportunity to thank the MRSI and SOMAR for this platform to share about the project that Ipsos implemented in India. My presentation will highlight the differentiators of this project, why we think it deserves to be showcased, and our learnings that can help a wide range of stakeholders. A quick overview of how the presentation is organized. I'll start with the context, the need for this assessment, and moving on, summarizing the project scope, our approach and techniques, and how it has contributed to creating a repository for our client that stays beyond the project. Post this, I will also highlight some of the key findings, how this work and the learning can benefit different stakeholders who are working to ensure access to safe drinking water for the rural communities. SDGs have provided a framework to ensure and accelerate provision of basic amenities to all citizens. One such SDG is SDG 6, Clean Water and Sanitation for All, that also includes the target that by 2030, achieve universal and equitable access to safe and affordable drinking water for all. We all know that while substantial progress has been made in increasing access to clean drinking water and sanitation, billions of people, mostly in rural areas, still lack these basic services. Worldwide, 1 in 3 people don't have access to safe drinking water. Closer home, the state where this project was implemented ranks at 19th position among all states and union territories in India in providing drinking water supply to individual households. Only 3 in 10 rural households in the state have piped drinking water connection, and therefore reliance on community sources remain high. The state government has designed and implemented number of schemes to improve access to safe drinking water. One such schemes include installation of water purification plants or WPP. The water purification plants are generally installed in those habitats which are affected by health harming microbial infections and water sources with quality issues. More than 18,000 water purification plants have already been installed since 2017 and 2018. However, the state lacked a comprehensive MIS of plants installed with their details in terms of their locations, their functionalities, and use of these plants across the state. This information was critical for the state to design the future policies and ensure that the benefit of this existing policy is reaching the population for which it is intended. In this context, Ipsos was commissioned to conduct an audit of water purification plants in the state. So, as explained in the context, the need of the client was to understand and establish the relevance of the RO installation. That is, the 18,000 plants that have been installed, are they relevant, are they functional, are they being used by the community? What should be the strategy for future installation in light of various different schemes that are coming into place, as well as ensuring that this current installation and the assets that have been created remain relevant and are being utilized, as well as estimating the O&M requirement. With this objective in mind, Ipsos designed the audit with 4 key components, which were creating a digital database, auditing the RO plans, collecting user feedback, and pasting of asset tag stickers for tracking and future reference. I'll take a minute to detail out the various components of the audit. The first one was the digital database, wherein now the state has a dashboard with a list of almost 18,000 plants which have been audited. This digital database is comprising of 60 plus metrics for each plant, which was not present earlier. So earlier what we had was just an Excel sheet with these plants with some information on their addresses, many plants which did not even have their addresses, and any further details of when the installation happened, whether it is functional, whether it is being used, or what is the status in terms of maintenance. The second component of the exercise was conducting a physical audit of the water purification plants, which was based on physical visits to each of these plants and data being collected through reporting, that is by answering of the questions by the water operator, observation of the functionality of the water purification plants, and recording this data that is being collected through images and video. At the end of the exercise, we have geotag locations and images for each plant which is available with the department. The third component was the community survey, where we interviewed about 90,000 community representatives, which included both users and non-users, and this was with the objective to understand the different aspects of availability, affordability, and quality of water. And lastly, the fourth component was pasting of asset tag stickers. So now at the end of the audit, each water purification plant in the state is now tagged with a plant ID and an asset tag that can provide required information on plant just through the click of a phone by scanning the QR code and getting the requisite information on the status and functionality of the plant. One key characteristics of our audit was the approach where we used an integrated platform for data collection, monitoring and reporting, which included creation of a specific app, a mobile app, which was used by 100+ auditors to conduct the audit across the states, and an interactive and a dynamic dashboard which provided real-time access not only to the progress of the audit but also on the key observations of the audit which were available to the department and to Ipsos during the course of the fieldwork for the audit. So in summary, the digitized asset monitoring had following key differentiators. One, through the mobile app and the dynamic dashboard, it has contributed to building an inventory or an MIS for 18,000+ water purification plants in the state. It also has each water plant linked feedback from the users and the non-user surveys, which has helped for the triangulation on reporting on the functionality of the water purification plants. We also have validated data with evidence to facilitate official review and reconciliation. So unlike a survey where only questions are asked and the data is reported in terms of aggregate, we have plant specific information on what is the status, whether it was functional at the time of audit, what was the reason for the plant not being functional, and all this data is captured and available with evidence in terms of images, responses from the operator as well as the video documentation. And lastly, this dashboard is still live and active and is being used for the subsequent audit that the state has planned, and this dashboard will be handed over to State Department, which will remain in the repository for any future monitoring and tracking of the exercise that state intends to carry out. So as we mentioned, this dashboard was dynamic and was customized to meet the requirement of state and district officials. I will just highlight some of the key features of the dashboard, which included not only for quality checks, which included like a supervisor back check or the desk assessors wherein they could view the audit data on a real-time basis, provide feedback to auditors on field and ask them to carry out any rectification required if the images captured were of low quality, low resolution, or the videos were not well captured and synced. In addition to that, one of the key features was also addition of new plants, because as we mentioned, before we started the audit, there was no MIS that existed, and we did not even know whether the list that is provided to us is a comprehensive list which includes all the plants in the state. And therefore, during the process, there was a requirement for the app and the dashboard to allow addition of new plants, but only after verification to ensure that there is no duplication of the asset that is being added to the inventory. And the app and the dashboard allowed for this feature not only for the Ipsos core team to review the addition and approve the addition, but also for the state officials to review that these are the number of plants that are being added to the inventory. At this point, I would also like to share a very small video of about a minute, which will summarize the requirement and what we were able to achieve through this audit and how it has benefited the department.
As part of their flagship project, the state installed RO plants across villages to ensure sustainable and safe drinking water for rural populations. Until the project, there was an absence of any systematic review of their operationality status. Thus, there was an urgent need for ground-level assessment of the RO plants. Ipsos was tasked with the auditing of over 18,000 plants. Our audit approach had 4 components. This was not just a survey, but included physical visits, observations, and conversations with over 90,000 users and non-users for audit to build a MIS of RO plants in the state. On the back end, A multifunctional dashboard allowed for real-time access to the status of the audit. At the end of the project, we now have a statewide digital inventory of the RO plants, which is a key component of ensuring monitoring and accountability across different levels.
So moving on, some of the key findings that came out of this audit. One, as I mentioned, addition of the new plants. So almost 1,000 plus new plants were added to the inventory, which previously did not exist. The department, both at the state and the district level, now have an accurate number or details about the percentage of plants that are not functional or vandalized in their jurisdiction. We also have specific data on what are the main reasons for plants not being functional, which could be either the water source has dried up or the maintenance is not up to the mark that is required. And this therefore helps the district and the taluk level officials and the engineers to take corrective action. Also, one of the benchmark of installation of the RO plant or the data that is required in justifying installation of a RO plant is the sales data, which did not exist prior to this audit, but as a result of this audit, now for each plant there is sales data that is available, and therefore the state and the district officials can review if the sales data meets the benchmark of sales justifying installation. And lastly, there is community feedback at a large scale in terms of their availability, affordability, and quality of water that is being made accessible to them through this water purification plants. An additional feature of this audit exercise was the reconciliation process. Though this was not originally envisaged, we understood that this is critical to ensure ownership and accountability of data that can eventually enable corrective actions. So what we did in this extensive engagement with the district officials over 2 to 3 months is summarized on this slide. What we did is we shared the final audit findings with each district through dashboard and an Excel sheet. We briefed the district officials, including the CEOs and the engineers, also collected their feedback and compared their feedback with the data from the districts which was collected through this audit, and an analysis of percentage of audit findings that matched or did not match was submitted to the state level department. What we would like to highlight here is that during this exercise of reconciliation, we saw a lot of extensive responsiveness and engagement with the district officials, because when they saw that X percentage of the plants were not functional in their district because of different reasons, which were minor interventions required, the districts did go out and carried out the repairs and then reported back that the plants are now functional. And the same was also included in the report that was submitted to the state level. To sum up, the audit finding reports also highlighted some of the key recommendations. One of it was rationalization of the existing plants, also guidelines for need-based further installation to be done, and further not only formulating and formalizing the guidelines for installation to the maintenance, but also disseminating these guidelines so that once the plants are installed, over a period of time when these plants are handed over to community institutions like Gram Panchayat or users group for maintenance, everybody, the concerned stakeholders, are aware of what their roles and the expectations are. We have also reiterated the use of technology for monitoring and tracking performance of water purification plants in future, creating a mechanism for user feedback, and also eventually having transparency to report on sale and utilization of funds. The key impacts of this exercise is that at the end of the audit, the state now has an inventory of water purification plants in the state that can aid monitoring and bring in accountability. There exists a framework for assessing audit of plants for functionality and related actions for operations and maintenance. And lastly, a tool that can be used by the state, district, and community to give feedback if the water purification plants are not functional or they are satisfied with the water or there are any concerns about maintenance of these plants. Like any exercise which is carried out this case, there was no gap or absence of the challenges that our teams faced in completing this audit. So one of the limitation or the challenge of this audit was that this was a one time point in audit, which basically means that on the day of the audit, we had visibility on what is the functionality of the plant. But when we went to the district with that status, there were discussions around whether this is a correct representation of the audit status. And that is where the engagement with the district officials in aligning them with the protocol, how to understand or appreciate the findings, and if they have taken any corrective actions, report that, because that only shows the proactiveness from the district, really helped us in the reconciliation process. The lack of uniform database across different districts was one of the key challenges. Every district has a different format, different variables, different information areas that they maintain or do not maintain for their water purification plants in the state, and therefore each district response was in different format, and it was a tedious task to standardize and bring in consistency in finalizing the inventory, which we finally achieved at the end of the exercise. The capacities at the state district level of different stakeholders was another challenge, which again called for extensive engagement, multiple visits, and sitting in the engineer's office and CEO's office to explain the audit findings and take their feedback for reconciliation. And lastly, as I mentioned earlier, this entire exercise was carried out in 2020 with stop and start kind of approach due to COVID-19 related restrictions that were imposed. But eventually, we were able to successfully complete this audit with the teams that really stepped up and did this exercise with utmost sincerity and in very challenging situations. So what are the learnings from this? So as I have highlighted throughout the presentation, there is extensive learning and application of this approach for various other initiatives of government investments where assets are created. So to sum up, the learning is that the state ownership and any initiative that is driven by the state ownership and backed by technology and a robust approach can create stronger monitoring systems for community assets that are created for the citizens. I'll be happy to answer any questions that the audience may have, and thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Tripti, for great work and lots of insights.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity to present our work, presenting to you Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Inclusion and diversity is at the heart of Diageo's purpose, where they talk about celebrating life every day, everywhere. They want to build a portfolio that are inclusive in their influence, inspiration, and impact. They also wish to create brands that stand for and tell narratives based on this equal philosophy. Kantar has been partnering with them over the last 3 years and working with them to make the narratives inclusive not only in terms of communication but the entire brand strategy. There are 3 specific work streams that we work with them. Unlocking opportunities amongst women consumers, progressive gender portrayal, a semiotic approach where we've analyzed more than 500 ads over the past 2 years, and understanding the gender spectrum and how mainstream brands can make their narrative more inclusive. Within the purview of this research, we will delve deeper into the gender spectrum understanding study. Let us start by understanding how we conceptualized this research and designed the workflow. The starting point was to familiarize ourselves with the nuances and sensitivity of the topic. The first step was to develop an accurate understanding of various orientations that fall under the gender spectrum. This included the nomenclatures, the meaning systems around them, and how to refer to them. Recruitment was the next milestone, where the key task was to identify respondents who are open to come forward and share their life stories. The key task in recruitment level was also to maintain a representation of various orientations within the gender spectrum. While designing and conceptualizing the discussion guide, we followed a human-first approach where sensitivities and boundaries were practiced with utmost caution. It was empathetic listening that enabled our moderators to connect with the respondents and navigate with them in their roller coaster life journeys. The analysis framework also needed to be robust and look through multiple lenses. We looked at identity construction from a cultural to an individual lens, leading to multi-layered tension points. The first step was to analyze the identity construction from an extrinsic versus intrinsic lens. Extrinsic codes are the ones that are developed through social interactions and affirmations, and intrinsic codes are inward journeys that we take to find oneself. We also analyzed the identity construction as a shared experience where we explored the connecting themes at a community level. This was explored from the lens of life, work, and play. The third lens of analysis was focused on individual journeys, where we used the framework of identity construction. This framework had three distinct but very fluidic junctures: construction of identity, embodying and forming of identity, and its expression. This robust analysis was then connected to the theme of socializing and hence implication for the category and brands. For people who fall under the gender spectrum, we observed that there is a constant conflict between the extrinsic and intrinsic codes. This led to two separate worlds of socializing: the public world of socializing and the private world of socializing, where the public and the private usually did not meet. The private world of socializing is a space where one sheds all their inhibitions and wants to be free of judgment. Therefore, it was very carefully curated. In contrast, the public world of socializing is a more orchestrated space, hence more superficial. This led to powerful cues for the category and brands to consider. It guided the occasion play, how to play in each of those moments, the codes at play, and the role of the category. Now, let us look at some of the interesting findings from this research. Identity is a social construction. It is a continual process built through social interactions and affirmations from social system, along with the intrinsic process of finding oneself. Here, we witnessed a strong tug of war between the extrinsic society and intrinsic feelings of an individual. From a societal angle, marginalization was a key theme at play. The mainstream societal codes and expectations are so strongly ingrained that any deviation is considered as an aberration, and the identity in question is marginalized, often blamed, and many times forced to return to the traditional gender roles. Popular culture and cinema reflects this societal angle strongly, where marginalization, shame, guilt are strong themes, so strong that in many depictions the characters eventually assume a traditional gender role and try to reintegrate into the mainstream. In contrast, while the society marginalizes and shames, it still cannot curb the individual's latent need to discover and form and embody their identity. However, this intrinsic journey is also not harmonious. It is vulnerable and a complex battle with inner self. In the recent times, while marginalization remains an undercurrent, This turmoil of individual journey has taken up space in the popular culture, with layered conflict stories in this phase of identity construction and embodiment. When we analyzed their stories from the lens of life, work, and play, we understood that their realities, vulnerabilities, and tension points were shared at a community level and it needed to be acknowledged. Not being able to express their authentic self to their family led to a life full of inhibitions and duality. Therefore, showcasing some of the stories where their trusted people celebrate their identity would be a potential space to explore. We also understood that most of them had lost their childhood friends in this journey of identity construction. Adult friendships and partners played an imperative role in their lives. Therefore, showcasing stories of adult friendships centered around empathy and bonding, or around romantic relationships centered around quality time and intimacy, shows greater potential for striking an emotional connect. When we explored the space of work, we understood that the mainstream careers were often centered around financial autonomy. It was seen as a means to an end, while the creative careers allowed them to express, challenge, and move beyond the guardrails of code of conducts. When we spoke about media and representation of the community, we understood that shows that represent the community in a real life-like manner and focuses on their relationships in a normalized way had potential to connect at an emotional level. Showcasing more normalized stories to remove stigma, taboo, and hypersexualization associated with gender spectrum would be another true representation of the community. When we delved deeper into the world of socializing, we found two distinct worlds, an obligatory public world and an uninhibited private world. Here we understood that bonding and connection was far more important than status and show off. In the context of the category, we also noticed that there was a strong fear of stimulation. Hence, easier liquids were preferred. When we analyzed the stories from an individualistic lens, we found them to be unique, given their social context and intrinsic needs and desires. This gave birth to 4 distinct micro-identities, each one of them unique in their needs, dreams, anxieties, and coping mechanisms. The 4 distinct micro-identities were the balancers, the spirited yet cautious, the liberals, and the firebrand. Let us understand each of these micro-identities. Balancers. They like to always play it safe. They lead a closeted dual life, a mainstream life with family and professional world, and an authentic life with their partners and trusted friends. They wish to keep these both worlds running in parallel and hope each day that they never meet one another. Their biggest fear is the reveal of their authentic identity itself. Spirited yet cautious. They are very similar to balancers with one key difference. They also are currently leading a dual life, a mainstream life with their family and professional world, and authentic life with their partners and trusted friends. However, the key difference is that they are hopeful to make these worlds meet and lead a harmonious life and embody their identity wholeheartedly. The third micro-identity is of liberals. They have had a positive construction of their identity and have reached a phase where they have wholeheartedly accepted and embodied their identity. Now, their desire to empower themselves and everybody around them, hoping for a more diverse and inclusive world for everyone. The last micro-identity is of a firebrand. They have lived the most conflicted life before embodying their identity. It is this conflicting journey that has made them the crusaders of their identity. They desire to inspire the world around them and wish to go beyond the gender identity. Understanding the micro-identity has played a very critical role in this study. It has helped the category and brands to choose their brand voice and tap into these micro-identities at a very personal and up-close level. The study findings led to recommendations at various levels. At a micro-targeting level, we explored each of the micro-identities, their needs, their fears, their coping mechanism, and how can a brand engage with them in a meaningful manner. At a community level, we explored 5 overarching themes which would form the foundation of creative development, a meaningful foundational step towards inclusivity and equal philosophy. Along with this, we also had implications from the category lens. We learned that bonding and connection was the strong theme that needed to be explored. We also had to reconsider how to showcase the status codes for this segment. Additionally, moderation and restraint was a key story that was emerging, which needed to be an integral part of the strategy. Let us conclude the presentation by understanding the impact of the study. The study findings is not only used by the marketing team. The human resource team at Diageo is looking at the findings to make the workplace culture more inclusive. The themes that are recommended are being implemented in the Inclusion and Diversity brand campaign for 2022. The recommendations from the study also go beyond communication. It focuses on how to unlock opportunities for the category and make it more accessible for consumers who belong to the spectrum. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to share our work and signing off with the dream and hope for an inclusive tomorrow.
Thank you so much, Team Kantar and Diageo. We have Deepika with us. Deepika.
Yes, I'm here.
Excellent work. Thank you so much. A very sensitive subject. So the question is, what was the main surprise in terms of challenges, and how did you manage as a team? Did you need some special skill set? Were you prepared to drive such a project?
Okay.
How did you do it? And as an advice for others.
Okay, so I think one of the key things that we prepared ourselves at a design stage is to have a very human first approach. I think sensitivities, understanding the entire nomenclatures, how to refer to them, I think that was one of the prep that we did. And even during the entire interviews, one of the key things that we did was also to address the entire conversation, which was supposedly awkward about gender identity, right after the warm up, because we did not believe that we wanted to beat around the bush. So we wanted to have that difficult conversation with them and do it in a very authentic sense. And the entire moderation was done as a heart to heart conversation because and we gave them opportunity to come forward and share their stories. So yeah, that was one of the preps that we did.
Hi, I'm joining in as Deepika itself because we're using the same ID, but my name is Arnob. I'm part of Diageo. Can I just answer the question along with Deepika and add a point?
Of course, fine? Yes.
I think part of the process that Deepika, me, and a couple of more of our team members went through was being able to shed everything you know aside, because nothing prepares you for the kind of dilemmas, the anxieties when you listen to them, right? So we first had to go through a process of sudden unlearning and then say, okay, now we need to learn, right? So it was like, you, no matter how much you prepare yourself, no matter how much you say, and unless you belong to the spectrum yourself, it's never quite enough to say that you are at a certain level of understanding. So for us, the biggest challenge was, am I at base zero, and acknowledging that we are at base zero. And as planners, as researchers, it's always a hard task to always say, listen, I don't know, and let's start from there, right? There is always personal integrity and personal learning that you always want to bring, and I think putting that entire thing aside. The second thing that we had to bring, hence linked to this, was humility. to know that there is a world that we just don't understand, and we need to still be part of them without being part of them, and yet respect that boundary and want to ask them to cross that boundary into their world. So it was quite a binary situation, but for us, I think it was one of the most exhausting, one of the most tiring, but one of the most learning-based experiences for all of us as planners and researchers and scientists.
I can imagine that. So had you had any challenges or something that goof ups, and how did you manage it? Share some learning for others who would plan such project in the future.
The first one, of course, I said. And Deepika, do you want to go into? Should I start? Is that cool with you? Okay. So I think the first thing is unlearn, right? Don't go with any conception that you know this world. You don't. You may have someone in your family. You may have someone in your friend. You may be. You may have acquaintances, colleagues who are on the spectrum that you're aware of, but nothing prepares you. So be prepared to be really hit with a lot of new stuff you've never heard. The second challenge we kind of faced was for them to open up and actually come out. So some of these conversations we had were people who were friends of friends or friends that we knew, right? Because even the recruitment process was for us for the challenge. We spent some time and weeks to get the recruitment running. And I remember when we had to start contacting our friends we knew were on the spectrum, and how many of them were open to coming and even coming on video camera to talk to us, because it was done pretty much in the COVID season. So that kind of was one of the biggest challenges. The third one is you will have to take yourself out of the equation, because the experiences, the ideas, the insights that these consumers speak about, these participants speak about, is always going to be new. And no matter how much you come with the bias, I think be ready to come up with something that it might shock you. It might just some of the experiences, and because of how tough some of their lives have been in terms of being hypersexualized, in terms of being marginalized, misunderstood, I think always be prepared to respect no matter how much it biases your views. Deepika?
Yeah, no, I agree with you on all the points that you mentioned about the preparation and how you actually did the entire conversations with utmost sensitivity in mind.
I'm sorry if I missed it, but how much time it took for you to prepare for this project? You mentioned a lot of time, but what does it mean a lot of time?
So from a perspective, and because it was linked with a couple of more projects, right? So Kantar and Diageo, we were working together on the progressive portrayal framework, which we were evaluating, which was understanding communication in advertising, and how much progressive portrayal happens. From there, we kind of questioned, do we understand people within the spectrum? So the whole thing from definition, exploration, and the unlearning bit took us about a month and a half, right? And I mean, we learned the hard way, and we learned the way that, okay, this doesn't work, let's go. So traditional recruitment researchers didn't really work for us. We had to redo the entire process. So it took us about a month and a half, and a little beyond that, to be really be prepared for the entire thing. But it was a learning in its own.
Thank you so much. It was a great project and nice talking to you. And thank you so much for sharing your learnings. I hope it will help somebody in the future.
Absolutely. You see a lot of work coming from Kantar and Diageo on this one. And
we look forward. We want a part 2 or part 3 to this. We look forward to hear back.
We will. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Tripti, if you are back, we would like to just go a bit back to your question. So the question that we were trying to get an answer is, what is the unique point working on sustainability compared to a regular project that you would do normally? Is there any difference, and what is that difference?
Yeah. So I think, as I highlighted during the presentation, what was really unique was the reconciliation process that we followed for this project. Because usually when a research or a project is done, you just come up with a thick report and submit it to your client and leave it to them to kind of absorb the findings and what needs to be done with the findings. But in this case, because we incorporated reconciliation with the district officials, we went back to all the 30 districts and had extensive discussions with them, explaining the audit findings, how to interpret it, and the responsiveness and proactiveness that we saw was what made the project unique, because you could see action taken as a result of the findings during the course of the report finalization process. So I think that was something which really was unique about this project, and also bettered the credibility and the relevance of this project for all the stakeholders.
Thank you so much. So one advice that you would give to anyone who would like to do a similar project across the world?
Yes, so I think more than advice, I would say like this is a learning, and I think each context, each culture is different, so you would know what works best. But in our case, I think working with the client team very closely, having intensive engagement from the beginning of the project, absolute transparency about the challenges that you are coming across, and coming up with collective solutions, and pushing yourself and the client to adopt technology which can in the long run really bring in sustainability, better transparency and accountability, is something that we would really encourage for other teams to try.
Thank you so much, Tripti. Thank you for all the answers and for the great work that you have done.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
We'll move to the next amazing work, and let's see a bit of it, and then we'll come back to answering the questions. If anyone has a question, please drop it in the question box on our platform, and we will try to answer all.
Hello everyone, this is Roshan Miranda from Bintex. Today I would like to talk to you about how Bintex achieves a lot of SDGs, not just how it achieves a lot of SDGs, but also about how social impact and environmental impact is at the core of Bintex model. This journey for us started a while ago when we were foraying into waste management in 2016. I spoke to somebody at United Nations who was an advisor to United Nations, and I was talking to him about what can be done in waste management because that's where we want it to be. And that gentleman told me, Ocean, in India, there is only waste transportation, there is no waste management. It was a good reality check for us, and it told us what all needs to be done in this sector. And that's how our journey started. And today, what we have in Bintex is much derived from our experiences in waste management, where we saw that a good chunk of plastics that get collected today, or sometimes doesn't get collected today, ends up in environment. But I want to make sure the context is set right. India does amazingly well in recycling much of the plastics that it produces. Almost more than 50% of the plastic gets recycled beautifully well, thanks to all the informal sector that collects this. These are the waste pickers who come to your house, maybe who are walking on the streets, taking all that is valuable to them and are earning livelihood. By doing that, they're making sure that much of the plastic doesn't end up in the environment. But still, there's almost 50% of the plastic which ends up in the environment. It either goes into the water bodies, and you have all heard about how plastics are getting more hazardous to the oceans and the life underwater and so on. They either go into water bodies, they either get dumped, or they get burned, most likely. So much of the plastics that are flexible in nature are mostly going into the environment, or do go into the environment to a good extent. Second is, even in some areas like in hill stations or in much rural areas, these even rigid plastics do not get collected. This was a problem that we had to kind of tackle. When we were looking at it, we're coming up with multiple models where we had to make sure that the plastics of any type derive the same value. That was the intention. That is only when we can actually address the collection bias, make sure that the plastic gets collected, and then goes through the recycling, upcycling, and downcycling process. That's when we hit upon the idea that hey, plastics, or for that matter, household waste, is an amazing source of consumer consumption pattern, right? And that if a plastics become a data point that addresses the value bias that exists, and hence can address the collection bias that exists in the waste management sector, making sure all plastic gets collected. That was a bingo idea that we came to, rather it came to us, and it kind of has, in a way, at least amongst the people whom we collect, has transformed the way waste is looked at, has made sure that all types of plastics are collected and it goes through upcycling and recycling system, and make sure that people are also incentivized and are made to segregate the waste and give us the waste so that we make sure that waste goes through right environmental endpoints. Now, the idea is very simple. The household waste is a source of consumer consumption peak. Just by looking at the household waste, we can very easily figure out whether a household is moving from consuming regular staples to organic staples. Are they more health conscious, and is that why they're doing it? Right? Is there a regimen to the way skin color, or sorry, is there a regimen to the way in which skincare products are used? Right? Is there a regimen to using different types of creams, to serums, to masks, to any toners and anything, micellar water, anything like that, right? Is there a regimen to the consumer, and hence they use particular products in certain ways? Or how is the new product doing? Is it being picked up by households? Is it being consumed regularly? Are they liking it? They're coming back to it? We can answer pretty much any of these questions related to consumer consumption just by looking at their waste, just by analyzing their waste. And hence, the narrative has changed around the waste. It's now a data point. It helps us value the chips packets, the chocolate wrappers, and the carry bags as much as we value shampoo bottles or PT bottles. And hence, they all have a high value. Now, that is the idea with which we started. And that possibly is giving you an information that, it is already giving you an idea that, we are how environmentally responsible the whole model is when it comes to managing one of the waste streams, right? Or the waste streams or waste that gets produced in the households, and how that is helping the environment, our own households, or even life underwater. So I'll take you through a little bit of Bintex model, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about the impact that we've already achieved, and then we'll conclude the discussion saying that what we hope to achieve in the future. Now, coming to how is this model a little different? Right? It actually captures the actual consumption. It's not a claim based. It's not memory recall based in any way. It just is the actual consumption. What is produced, what is consumed, is actually what is captured. Bins don't lie. And it's a passive way of collecting it. Customers don't get involved in telling us what they consume or in letting us know how they consume. They just they put all their dry waste that they have produced in the house, put it in a zip tied bag, and then leave it out, and that gets captured as the data source for a given household. So hence, it's both passive collection and actual tracks actual consumption. Above all, I think it captures, the best thing is it captures everything from shampoo sachet all the way to iPhones, right? Be it FMCG products, even the categories which are extremely difficult to capture. We capture those, FMCH, apparels, electronics, even Indian manufactured foreign liquors. Be it any of these categories, thousands of categories, we capture it all from day one. It provides the best view of the new products innovations. While I'm talking about Bintex, please keep this in mind that it's at the context of kind of making sure that we hit those environmental impacts. Right? It's making sure that all of these products, all of these good things about the Bintex model, all happen because we collect that waste, which otherwise would have ended up in the environment. So, while I'm boasting about how this model works beautifully well, it's because we are collecting something that people dispose, and we collect something that is that actually provides the actual consumption data. Right? You can actually capture you can actually capture new products very early, just first or second month of the introduction. We capture innovations, premiumization, because of which we can get to any premium households, gated communities. It doesn't matter. We have data for those. Those were difficult to capture household, and we are tackling those first. It tells us where they have bought it from. The e-commerce, the B2C. That is also possible using this model. I'm happy to talk about it. And the next thing is we have built in a lot of technology on how we capture data, also on how we analyze the data. It could be machine learning algorithms, bringing in artificial intelligence into the whole model, helps us capture it, and in analytics, which is exciting. It's future looking, and as I told you, it provides us access to gated communities and those premium households, which otherwise are very difficult to capture. Now, next I'm going to talk to you about what is the impact we have created so far by working with around 20,000 households across 7 cities in India, and how that impact has made every Bintexer very proud. And that's the impact that keeps us going. That's the impact that keeps us pushing the boundaries. And that's the impact that helps us recruit the talent. That's the impact that is moving Bintex in the direction with much more vigor than what we would have been moving at if it was just the data model, right? So that is, again, before I get that, extremely thrilled about the recognition we have got from MRSI. We were the winner of Best Data Collection Innovation Award this year. And thanks to MRSI for recognizing us. Apart from having clients who use our data, who appreciate our data, and who also refer us to other people because they love what we do and they love the data product we provide them, this recognition made us feel that this is amazing. We are here to create that impact, sustain that impact, and also we are here to be the future force in the data analytics. Right now, going back to our metrics and what we have what we have achieved as an impact, we pretty much create this environmental and social impact every day. We've collected so far more than 1,000 metric tons of different, all dry waste, of which 400 metric tons or more than 400 metric tons is just plastics, because 40% of what we collect is plastics, close to 40% of it. And this helped us avert 2,800 metric tons. Each metric ton is around 1,000 kg. Right? 2,800 metric tons of carbon dioxide averted from the environment, and helps us save 8,500 trees, because 55% of what we collect is paper, and that helps us, get this paper into the recycling stream and hence avoid trees being cut. 8,500. That's just an immense number. And then apart from that, that's about how we hit a lot of environmental impacts and kind of create that every single day. Apart from that, the one thing we are equally proud of is the social impact. Almost more than 100 bottom of the pyramid or waste pickers we've hired, and they are the ones who do pick up from these households and make sure that they're part of this formalized system, right? They earn more and they have a better quality of life. I'm going to show you one slide later on story of Kiran, where how it is kind of just a story to tell you about how the social impact matters. 75% of our employees are women. That's just a brilliant record we're extremely proud of, including some of our top management is filled with women. While we work in every city, we don't do pickups ourselves. Bintex doesn't do pickups ourselves. We work with partners in every city who are in the waste management sector to help us do these pickups. And that's around 6 entrepreneurs whom we're supporting. Right? And we hope in future we will be supporting hundreds of these entrepreneurs who dream to be in the waste management space and who can make it work. We hope to make it work for them, because we make sure that their operations are profitable. So that's about the kind of impact we want to create by creating entrepreneurs. So that's just another thing we're extremely proud of. Now, while I talk about that, I think another thing I definitely want to bring upon, it's indirectly related, is that we recently collaborated with Google. I mean, by recently, around 8 months ago, where we are now building an open source. Anybody can download it and anybody can use it. Open source algorithm, which can be used to pick up waste, which can be used to sort the waste in a warehouse, and hence making some of the skill-based sorting much easy and also available to all our entrepreneurs whom we support, as well as to anybody in it. So that's another thing we are hoping to build with Google, and make the sustainability-based business models much more easier to get into and much more accessible to anybody who wants to get into this. Now, beyond that, you must have already kind of sense where I'm getting. We hit around 6 SDGs at the core of Bintex. These are clean water and sanitation. It's straightforward. I don't need to tell you that. Sustainable cities and communities. We work with more than 400 communities across 6 cities or 7 cities today, and plus multiple individual households. Around 30% of our collection happens from individual households, and 70% of them happens from communities, where we take few houses in a community to make this happen for the data panel, and we actually adopt the whole communities for our access panel. All right, and that is exciting, because every community is building green champions to make it work within these communities. Climate action is at core of what we do, because we avoid carbon dioxide from the environment, and of course, plastic not getting into the water is helping life below water. That's You must have all heard how the weight of the plastic in 2040 is going to be more than the weight of the fish in the ocean. That is not a statistic we want to be reading any day. And we hope that when Bintex scales up, it will at least avert some of that plastic getting into the ocean. And we want to be in multiple countries, and hopefully we will have bigger impact in that level at least. Although we don't hit directly gender equality, that's not how we started, but we ended up getting there. Gender equality, 70% of our women are, 75% of our workforce is women, and plus they're paid equally as men, and good health and well-being, just breathing better air. Those are the SDGs we hit directly or indirectly, which keeps us pushing. And here's the story of Kiran and Varalakshmi. These are 2 waste pickers coming from Sandegappa layout, who used to collect waste from Sandegappa layout in Bangalore already. To give you, if you don't know where Sandegappa layout or Hebbal is in Bangalore, if you've all flown to Bangalore and if you're heading towards the city, the first nightmarish traffic junction you hit is Hebbal Junction. These guys would be picking up waste around 1 kilometer from the junction. So this is where these guys were already doing it. We asked them, could you please help us pick up waste? Could you be part of our network? Right? They were thrilled about it, because it provides them an additional income. Whatever they used to earn, we made sure that they get more than that, because they collect waste for Bintex. This is true for all other waste pickers who work with Bintex too. This is just a story of Kiran and Varalakshmi. And plus, they could enhance quality of life. Before, when they collected waste from these households, people used to come and then drop the waste into their vehicles. They would not let these waste pickers even touch their bins or buckets in which the waste was kept. But today, if you look at it, these guys take that app that we have for the Bintex. They actually asked us, can I download this app into my phone, and then can I do the scanning? It seems very easy. So until then, we had an agent who was to accompany them to do the pickups. And this is very early. This was in 2019, mid 2019. When they said, can we do this ourselves? I'm like, yeah, sure, do it. And then they, in fact, bought a phone, which is around 6,000 rupees worth of it together. And then with a little bit of help. And then they did download that. And now they go to scan the QR code of the households inside the gate. And that is the biggest, biggest excitement for them, because before people used to not even let them come near the gate. And now they get into the gate and then scan the QR code. And they feel like they're doing some tech job. All right. And plus they pick up the bags which are left outside the house from the doorstep and bring it to the vehicle. And then, these may not matter to people like us, and we may not even think about it. But then when we were talking to them about what is exciting about Bintex for them, these are the soft messages which you got, which we had never thought of. It just made us so proud of what we do. And, to be working with Kiran and Varalakshmi, they continue to work with us for 3 years now. It provides them some more time, because they don't have to sort the waste after they collect it. They just work for an hour, and then the rest of the day is available for them, at least in that area. So which is fantastic. They can do anything else they want. Plus, it provides them a social identity. They have a Bintex ID card, and they love showing it off to anybody and everybody. So that's just about these, and we're creating many such, we're supporting many such social waste pickers, creating that social impact. And it's exciting for people to be doing that day in and day out. That's about that. And then coming to our team, who are we? With the people who make it happen. Audit is the co-founder, leads the technology, He has a PhD in computer science, MBA from Cornell. There's a lot of tech what we've built. His machine learning PhD kind of makes it. He just built all the tech we need. Jay has built multiple R&D centers for pharma. Now he's building multiple warehouses for Bintex, and he takes care of operations. Comes from a pharma background, so he also takes care of a lot of FMCH work we do. Parul used to teach economics at ISD, and he was at Texas A&M before that. And she moved from academia of teaching economics to Bintex completely full-time because she loves what we do. And it's an opportunity to create primary data, which is so well defined. And she's excited to be working with us, and we are thrilled to have her too. So that's about the team which makes it happen day in and day out. And of course, I'm not including here those 100 people and the next to the management who make this happen day in and day out. Thanks to all of those, we create that impact today, and we hope to create that in future too. We hope to save millions of trees by our recycling efforts, millions of tons of plastic from getting into the environment, averting millions of tons of carbon dioxide from that, and thousands of poor and waste pickers recruited. And that's what we want to do. And at the end, it's because waste is not trash, but it's a data, and it's a source of data. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening. It's a pleasure, and absolutely happy to talk about our model. Absolutely happy to talk about what we do and how we can collaborate, either to create more environmental and social impact, or for your data needs. Lovely. Thank you so much.
Roshan, thank you for presenting your work. We all know how important is the waste management in the global cleanness and sustainability drive, with people's health and conservation of the resources being the responsibility of every government. It's not only for India. So you told us how it started and when it started. I just have a question. What would you do different now? Would be the start different?
Are you asking how we would do this differently, or what we would be doing next?
Yes, because I guess you had a lot of learnings and probably took more time to reach where you are now. But what would be an advice for somebody who would like to go the same route as you, or the same path?
Sometimes, we chat. I mean, we founders and also Parul and the other people in the management, we talk. We sometimes discuss how it's as though scripted. Our journey has been as though we have scripted it. So I don't think I would do anything differently. I think we have right kind of people have come together. We've done the right kind of things. Maybe what I would do a little more differently is get in people who know the FMCG world a little bit better. Few more people who can get us to a few more leads. Maybe that's one thing I would do differently from now on. But as such, I would, if I were to live this life again, I would do the same thing. So I don't think I would do anything different.
And have you noticed any changes throughout the years in the waste or the trends? Is it changing anything?
Absolutely. I think one thing that we've definitely noticed is that people who come to us, they come to us for multiple reasons, but almost 30-40% of them come to us because they want to be responsible about how they, in terms of the plastic they produce or how they recycle it. Right, and we see that. I mean, what I was trying to say is, the people have become much more conscious and responsible in the way they consume the products. We have seen that, there's a 30% of the people who come to us because they want to make sure that they recycle all their waste. And going through years, they've become much more responsible in the way they produce. They consume different types of products, and the plastic they end up producing it rather than leaving into the environment, right? Leaching into the environment. But that's again 30 to 40% of the people. But remaining 60 to 70% of the people do come to us because they want to, they earn from the waste, or because they want to be compliant. But a good thing is, everybody leads to a good environmental impact. That's just exciting. But as such, in terms of the way we produce, we sometimes joke that we should be collaborating with somebody in anthropology, to see how the waste stream has changed over time and how that has led to, how people are changing over time in terms of their consumption as well, and how newer and newer categories are getting into consumption habits of people. While a lot of them are not sustainable, many of them are also sustainable consumption as well. That is exciting.
Okay, and the last question that I have is share with us a trick and tips about how do you manage the cooperation for data collection? How do you get people cooperate with you?
Oh, it's as I said, 30 to 40% of them do come to us saying, hey, I want to segregate my waste. Can you please collect it from me, and then make sure you responsibly handle it. A good 30 to 40% remaining come to us because they want to be compliant with the regulation, and hence they want us to collect. So that is again smooth. So around 70 to 80% of them is almost inbound request for us, and remaining 30 to 40% is somebody whom we have to kind of coax to kind of work with us. But economic incentives work in that segment for those guys, because we do pay for the waste. They are willing to segregate, and once it becomes a habit, so almost 3 to 4 pickups, then they don't stop. It just becomes a habit for them, and they continue. I say this to a lot of people. For many, it may not matter that we pay a small amount for segregation of waste. But everything adds up, and it sometimes is paid to maids because they are the ones who are helping some of these households, or is given as an kind of a pocket money to kids because they kind of are enforcing that in the household. They are the ones who are champions who are leading this. It could be anything, but any of these, it's an economic incentive, or the environmental incentive, or a badge value, or a compliance. Any of these, I think it's a combination of these which makes it work for us. And we're happy that at least that it's a combination that makes it work for us. We get all types of people, and whatever be the incentive, they continue to work with us.
Okay, so I see that you're taking the benefits of people being informed and some of mandatory compliance. But last question is, what are the common barriers to implementing waste management programs?
Oh, the behavioral change that you need in any given segment of society. But fortunately for us, there is Swachh Bharat Abhiyan that is going on, and there's a lot of awareness, within different, among citizens on perils of plastics in the oceans, and there's a lot of awareness around dump yards on the fire and so on. So it helps us, it makes it easier for us to send a message. That's one thing. Second is there is already a good segment of households in any city which are already segregating the waste and are looking for people like Bintex to kind of provide them the service. So that's the already existing the good chunk of the population which already is looking for a service like that, and they kind of have a peer effect, influencing others to kind of start segregating the waste too. So I think all these work in our favor so far. But when we go from, let's say we have around 20% of the cities segregating and working with Bintex, if we want to make it to 40 to 50% from there, we would definitely need push from the government and the policy makers to make that happen. And I think at that moment, we would be needing much bigger push, not just push that Bintex can provide and the stakeholders can provide, but society as a whole can provide. But at the moment, I think we have enough of a segment that is looking for a service like ours, and we're excited to kind of leverage that. Yeah.
Understood. Thank you so much, Roshan. Keep up with the great work, and we hope for more success for you. And congratulations again for winning the award at Golden Key Awards.
Thank you, Diana. Pleasure to be here today. Thank you.
So we'll move to the next insight session, and we'll come back with the questions.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to speak about our foundational work on sustainability now. We at Kantar have looked at why sustainability is a key movement and the need for immediate focus at a global level. Then we looked at how brands with a purpose that connects with consumers have much better valuations. What we have learned is the approach to sustainability needs to talk to local culture and deliver value in that context. Now let's zoom in from the world stage to India and see what consumers are looking for and asking of brands and corporates. From our foundational work, it is evident that consumer consciousness is high. They want a good, more responsible today for a better tomorrow for themselves and their children. 77% are prepared to invest time and money in companies that do good. 76% say they pay attention to environmental and societal issues in the news. And 74% feel that buying sustainable products is a true or good self-reflection. So in spite of the good intentions, the gap to action is still present. More than 3/4 of us claim we will put our money and time to do good. But the reality is that even though most people don't need to be convinced about the importance, this does not carry through into their behavior. It's just not second nature to take the sustainable option yet. We have found that there are three key factors that cause this inertia. Cost is a key factor. Even as sustainable materials are more widely used, a shift to the green or a clean option does not yet always meet the promise of real efficiency. There can even be extra costs. And that's a major break on consumer engagement. Comfort with existing options is a fact, and winning against incumbents can be a real challenge. And lastly, most of us are just a little bit lazy. So we don't try new things until they're really easy for us. So how can we close this value action gap? Fuel to action probably won't come from just being sustainable. Sustainability isn't a compelling enough benefit in its own right. Like with all good brands, we will need to give a clear benefit and reason to buy. Some examples of brands that drove engagement are Hari Prasad Mithaiwala offers the heartland of the category, great taste, variety with a vegan delivery. Patagonia contradicts what we expect, prompting us to reevaluate our behavior. And cloth bag alternatives next to checkouts, making the switch more convenient. Small changes, but with a big potential impact for your brand to be the one to close the gap. Unlike more developed countries where industry action is higher, in India, it's picking up momentum, and brands need to lead the way. We have some good examples happening around us. Carton-free packs for Dabur Red Paste with a new eco-friendly design. This is a pilot initiative being rolled out in modern trade outlets and is expected to result in an annual savings of 150 tons of paper. That's what I quote from Rajiv John, Vice President Marketing, Personal Care, Dabur India. We know of MAC nudging behavior towards recycling. Get free makeup from MAC by returning your empty containers. Hindustan Unilever is piloting an in-store vending model, Smart Fill. At Mumbai's Reliance Smart Acme Mall, users are offered 30 rupees off on the MRP if they use their own bottle and 15 rupees off on those who purchase the Smart Fill bottles. A simple search of sustainable toothbrushes throws up a wide range of price points. All these are steps in the right direction. Still, it needs to become more mainstream. While sustainable transformation is certainly not an easy journey, we've tried to call out some principles to help you navigate against what is relevant to help consumer, and some inspiration for how you can avoid the pitfalls that many organizations face. Okay, so one of the biggest questions we hear is, where do we start? And in response to this, we at Kantar have built a framework to help build a consumer-centric strategy in sustainable transformation. By identifying where to play, developing your purpose and creating meaningful communication, closing the value action gap by putting innovation at the heart of your strategy, embedding your strategy within employee culture, and of course, monitoring your progress and impact. We'll bring to life the first part of this journey today, using data from our foundational study, tangible examples, and key principles to help you get started. First of all is the idea of where to play, depending on your category. The likely issue of sustainability that will best resonate with you and your stakeholders are likely to be quite different. How can we identify that? Looking at the foundational perspective, which of the issues are relevant by sectors, so that as a client, you can navigate and find the right one. Second, on the basis of that, what is the meaningful, authentic, enduring purpose that your brand has? It's known that 20% of purpose is about defining it, 80% is about activation. Here we are really talking about purposeful impact. Third is about innovation. So on social environmental issues, which of those white spaces we can help organizations penetrate with sustainability-like propositions? In a world which is increasingly plagued by disruption, fourth is all about consumer and citizen change. We have done a huge amount of work in this space, and we have brought all that together in a common framework. What that framework allows us to do is how to understand behavior change and how to unlock it. Now, typically 50 to 70% people will say they really value social and environmental issues, and 30 to 50% will say it impacts the decision making. But unfortunately, the typical penetration of any product in any category which is sustainable is less than 5%. So there's a lot of work to be done. Fifth is about employee inspiration. We know employees are increasingly demanding organizations to have a stronger, meaningful purpose. So how can we inspire change agents to rally behind that purpose? Last but not the least, we have measurement tools that make sure we are measuring the right thing in the sustainable space. Behind the strategies we have helped develop or that were already in place and create a virtuous feedback loop so that strategies can be adapted. So once we know who we are talking to and how we want to use this engagement, we need to understand exactly what are those frictions: cost, comfort in existing options, lack of convenience of new alternatives, and importantly, what we could add as fuels to motivate the right sustainable behaviors so that we can design options to overcome those barriers and close that gap between what we know are high levels of concern and what we all do on a daily basis. The fundamental task is to initiate human-centric transformation. It's all about people as citizens, as consumers, and this is the specific space where we can help you the most. To begin with, we have the foundational study done across 9 markets. It looks at the entire sustainability landscape against the Sustainability Development Goals. What are the consumer behaviors and the areas of tension that stop the intent from becoming action? And how do consumers differ on this sustainability journey? All this plus an ecosystem of assets to inform and aspire. And we also have plenty of thought leadership from across Kantar on all aspects of sustainability, from brand purpose through inclusion and diversity to the impact of sustainable innovation in market. We've looked at what women want and also a deep analysis of who cares, who wants. Now let's look at some of the key highlights of the foundational study in India. We see Indian consumers care about 8 issues: eradicating poverty and hunger, good health and well-being, clean water and sanitation, sustainable cities and communities, and environmental issues that span climate action like life below water and life on land. Even as a developing nation, we are at par with Asian counterparts. When we look at the top concerns, India looks at issues beyond poverty and hunger. Even for a developing country like India, environment is as key an issue as immediate living. Consumers are seeing interlinkages between current state and the larger ecosystem and are cognizant of the interactions. The same actions won't work for everybody. Some people are much more passionate. We call them the actives. You can use them to lead the change, adopting early and getting your brand out for others to see and aspire to. And if you can crack the engaged, you are on your way to reaching half of the population. What we see here is that even though the actives feel so strongly, 49% don't know what to do and struggle to make sustainability a part of everyday life. Now, in our foundational study, we collected overall concerns and categories, specific concerns against the SDG framework for 31 categories. On this chart is an example for laundry. The vertical axis is how important issues are to people overall, and the horizontal axis shows how much people associate issues to the category specifically. So shields in the bottom right are your defensive plays. Those issues you have to address. Consumers won't thank you for it. They simply expect it. And they will hold you accountable if the spotlight is shown on lack of activity in these spaces. So for this category, it is overpackaging. If you then look at the right top of the map, swords are the issues the industry has a predisposition to champion. These are potential offensive plays that will allow you to differentiate and grow your brand. In laundry, it's about water pollution and lack of clean, safe water. As we said earlier, people care about overpackaging and waste, but it needs to be wrapped into bigger issues like water pollution. So how can laundry brands tie over packaging issues that they are tackling into the swords of addressing water pollution and clean water, clean, safe water to differentiate and lead? Worth noting that our clients find this shields and swords framework helpful in focusing and prioritizing the many activities they have on the go. Now, contrasting this to financial services category, the shields are about reducing unequal access to education and business issues of tax evasion. The swords are related to discrimination and worker exploitation, both for adults and children. We have also noted that if we are a services brand, expectations are more on fundamental rights and social improvements. And just to finish off this section with an example of a brand that is doing a great job, Google is ranked as the world's third most valuable global brand in our Brand Z evaluation, and its brand power is also reflected in strong brand purpose and corporate reputation scores. And as you can see, it has leveraged themes that are important to its specific category, using social issues as shields and environmental issues as swords. Its shields is about addressing social issues of discrimination, lack of opportunity, and unequal access to education. Reflected in their comms, the company has been using tech as a unifying social force. So if we take India as an example, we have the hugely successful reunion campaign where two friends who are separated living in India and Pakistan reunited after 6 decades. And then more recently creating access and education for the COVID-19 vaccine in India to help overcome public hesitation. The environmental issue of GHG emissions is at the heart of their SWOT strategy. Last year, Google made one of big tech's most ambitious environmental commitments to be running on carbon-free energy by 2030. And from a consumer perspective, they have enabled people to make small changes every day by providing tools to help consumers make choices that limit or reduce their carbon footprint. So I hope this gives you some food for thought about how to structure activities to pick the issues that matter in your sector. I hope you've already taken away some clear principles on where to start identifying the issues that are relevant to your sector category, the importance of anchoring these issues in the local market context, and defining your shield and sword strategy to take a leadership position. After seeing how the swords and shields can be applied to find a differentiating strategy before we end today, let's look at what are the key takeaways for India. Reducing waste is in our cultural DNA. There are practices that are adopted inadvertently without necessarily being conscious. Using cultural DNA to evoke action will be an easy do. Secondly, who will bear the cost of this transition? Consumers we know are conscious and given the right nudge can be encouraged to make changes that lead to a more sustainable life. That's on them. Brands will be expected to make their own transition and account for that. Consumers expect brands to deliver on the production sustainability goal. Brands need to produce responsibly and consumers will do their part. Third, they may not buy you for being sustainable, but they will reject you for not being responsible. Fourth, the key question is not will consumers pay a premium, but how have you helped me? Has a pertinent tension been solved in a unique, meaningful, relevant way? Finally, who will lead the dialogue? Will the consumers tell us what they want? Brands speaking on unresolved consumer tensions have always led the way, set the standards, disrupted the status quo, and brought change. Think of the complete man and the gender portrayal. Think of wigs, and again, acceptance of LGBTQ. Think of Whisper and how menstruating women can touch pickles. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Team Kantar. Do we have Ria with us?
Hi, Diana. Yes. I also have Neil with me. Yeah.
Hi, good afternoon. So thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the great work. But looking at all the findings and results, is it really that easy? And fortunately, yesterday we had the live, can brands be sustainable and profitable? So you kind of answered, but we still have this question. Is it that easy? or how easy it is to become sustainable and profitable, because that's in the end what is the goal of a brand.
And I think the point that Shubhadeep was making right in the beginning about the concept of atomic sustainability. I think the question, Diana, has moved a little further from is it easy or difficult? It's now become a question of are we taking that ownership or not? Now, what the consumer is saying is I'll do my bit, but what I need from the brand is to take that responsibility. And each is willing to take small steps as long as they are meaningful ones. So it may not be easy, but it's quite imperative. And I think that's the essence of what we see.
Yeah, and the consciousness is there. So therefore, this is the right time possibly for brands to start thinking about it.
But is there a limitation for an industry? Can everyone join the trend of sustainability? In terms of industry. So we know general terms that it's nice and good, but where is the limitation?
And if you look at the swords and shields that Ria took us through, and we did it for about 31 categories, and if we take certain adjacencies along with that, then we are largely talking about categories which we can think of in our everyday life. And there seems to be swords and shields in each one of them. And the consumers are able to tell us that in each of those categories that are part of their daily lives, what they think are going to be the hooks and what are going to be the sinkers. So in that sense, from a conscience point of view, from an awareness point of view, from a possibility point of view, it seems every category has a role to play. But what is important is not every brand will have the same right to play. The history of the brand, what the brand has been doing over the years, is going to create credibility or lack of it. And therefore, one has to look at the brand's history, the brand's position, and what people expect of me in that category, and then decide what is therefore going to be my right to be. So yes, everybody has a scope or an opportunity in it, but not everyone has the same right to play.
Yeah, Ria, you wanted to add something?
No, that's all.
So to summarize, what are the three, let's think about three top challenges for a brand in order to be considered sustainable?
Sorry, in order to?
To be considered that they are driving sustainability.
I think one of the clear things that consumers are increasingly asking of brands is that what's your purpose? And the way the consumer is expecting brands to define their purpose is it is something that is a sum total which is bigger than the benefits that you offer and the value that I pay for it. So in that sense, one of the key challenges is for a brand to be able to convince a consumer that I have a goal or I have a responsibility which is bigger than the problem that I'm solving or the benefit that you're buying me for. That becomes a very fundamental challenge for a brand. And I think the other part of the challenge is the value action gap that Ria touched upon, that in the moment of truth, making the more economical choice or the more convenient choice or the most easily available choice is always easier than making the more sustainable choice. Now, how much can I expect the consumer to be overcoming their own challenges? And me as a brand, how easy can I make for the consumer to make those right choices? Has got a lot to do with how we solve the last mile touch points on sustainability. So in a way, right at the broad base is creating belief for my purpose, and right down to the micro moment of making a decision, it is how easy can you make it for me? I think these are the two extreme challenges that a brand sort of needs to look at.
Thank you. And the last one, because we are representing Market Research Society of India, what is the role of research and how can it help? You kind of mentioned, but I want you to just focus on the research part.
Priya, from the gender point of view, you were touching upon, the angle of sensitivity. Is that something you want to sort of bring up
No, so
into
how
it?
can how can research or even company as yours can help brands with their sustainability drive at the corporate level?
I mean, one of the key things we are believing, Diana, in our India and our global sustainability practice, and which is why when I was talking of right to play, we felt we too have a right to play, is we believe that to bring real sustainability, it has to be a human-centric transformation. At the end of the day, it has to be a human behavior that needs to be nudged to tomorrow make a better choice than what I'm doing today. And that is where we in the research community are right at the center, because we are about understanding humans, understanding people's behavior. And that is where we have a role to play in sort of making it more human centric, so that ultimately the consumer as a human being understands what's in it for me. Now, that's where we believe is our credibility or right to play or role as market research community.
And also,
so
Neil, maybe partnering with the clients to understand the swords and the shields for each of the categories, for each of the brands, so that we know from the consumer point of view how each of the categories are placed. That's another way of looking at it.
So had you had any anecdote or surprises where, in the findings that you had, looking at so many brands, something that you didn't expect perhaps?
I mean, if you really look at it, from the context of, certain how one very positive, sort of an example, and if I may quote, Unilever, and Ria mentioned a couple of examples of Reliance store in Bombay, and how, sort of the way they have designed that you bring your refill and I'll sort of fill it up and I'll not take the packaging. And then on a completely another end, if you look at a brand that for many years has been all the more external facet of glamour and beauty, when the brand takes up a narrative which is closer to purpose, sort of bringing in a contemporary narratives in cultures, which we felt were reasonably conservative culture, we felt that there is so much of openness and there is sort of so much of willingness to sort of take that. Now, in that sense, I think there's a positive surprise that while there is a value action gap, but it seems that that bridge is going to cross sooner than we think. Now, that does create a lot of sort of hope for the future in that sense.
So the future is bright.
Yep.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the great work. Thank you for the presentation and answering the questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
So we'll move to the next great work that happened, and I hope you will find useful insights.
Hi, good evening. I am Dr. Bhavna Sharma, Head of Nutrition Science, and also the part of the Divisional Committee for Sustainability and CSR for the ITC Foods Division. And with me, we have Vara, who heads the entire Consumer Insight vertical for the Foods Business Division. And we are here to tell you a bit of an interesting journey that we have taken over a period of time, where I think some of the two most critical verticals have come together, which are consumer insights and sustainability action points. And together, we are very proud to share some of our key learnings over the past actual 1 and 2 years of working on some projects, which we have been able to bring them together and provide you some valuable project outcomes. Next. So as you know, see, ITC is a world-class brand making company. It has now reached over almost 150 million households and operating in 20 categories, right? We have some very, very important mother brands which are creating a very large value footprint for Indians across. And all this is translating into economic impacts, which is almost 3,000 million USD in aggregates, right? So one of the most interesting facets about the brands that we have, that almost all our brands are sitting at the intersections of innovation sweet spot, where not only we are able to understand how the consumer thinks about it, but we are also somewhere able to imagine the impact it's going to have on the experience the consumer has while enjoying the products and even long after. That means the impact it's going to have on the environment or the planet. So all these things together help us to innovate better using consumer and science together. Next. And that's why sustainability is at the core for ITC. You know, we genuinely believe that these are not two separate things. Which two? The commercial strategy and the financial impacts, and the impact your brands has on the entire planet when it comes to sustainability, right? We work on this unique approach, which we call as triple bottom line, which is basically taking care of economic, social, and the environmental factors together. And while we do that, one of the very important factor for us is what is the impact we actually have on the society at large. That is not just limited to that 2% of spends people have to do because of the philanthropic activities or it's a legal binding thing. We genuinely believe in creating sustainable livelihoods for people across. And that's why it's been in our credo, putting India first. In fact, Sab Saath Bade has been something which we all live for. And hence, we, I think, proudly can share that we are a world leader among the companies of our comparable dimensions in carbon and water dimensions, and we've been positive for actually more than 15 years. This is a very interesting facet because probably 15 years back, there were a lot of organizations who were not even thinking about all this. And we've been a leader in this space and we continue to serve the nation accordingly. Next. You know, one interesting factor is that when we talk about these things, it's not only just about commitments being done for future. It is actually based on the work which has been happened in the past. And when we say that, past actually means the entire backbone of the work which has been happening for decades over. And this work is not only something that we do because, you know, our businesses are standing there or we just gain to have some profit making things. They actually have proven, and in fact, some of them have gone ahead to become case studies. Like, for example, our ITC e-Chopar. It is one of the most critical case studies which I think everybody in India and even globally knows, right? Where we have been able to empower 4 million farmers. And even when the pandemic happened and things were tough, we actually went ahead and immediately created a digital platform from them so that there is no break in the value chain. We have lots of production kits. We empower them with the right knowledge. And we have taken a very, very important commitment to actually reach 10 million farmers by 2030. It also translates into key projects like 12 Mahine Haryali. That means it shows that, as you know, that agriculture is very, very climate controlled. So there are seasons and then there are off seasons. And we realize that the poor farmers cannot sustain their livelihoods like that. So at one side, we can't commit on sustainable livelihoods, and the other side, we just work with them when the season is correct. So for us, it is actually important that we work with them all 12 months in the year. And hence, we are able to positively impact their incomes because end of the day, that decides all the future ahead for them and their families. So hence, we work on creating the value chain around introducing good agronomic practices like providing them with the right varieties of seeds, cropping intensity, diversification, even adopting and at least understanding the newer aspects like biofortifications, different kind of farming equipments. And hence, we have been able to cover almost 200,000 farmers. And of this, 35,000 farmers have been able to double their incomes. When we do this work, it is very important for us to understand one thing. We don't do projects just because, you know, ITC can do projects or it has the accessibility or people trust us. We always take our partners on board. And I think one of the most important partners for us is the government of India itself. We are one of the most strategic partners when it comes to agriculture area with Niti Aayog, where we work with them in at least 27 aspirational districts. And by which we have been able to train 2.5 million farmers, right? Where, like I shared before in the example as well, they have been able to increase their incomes in the most sustainable fashion and not just sporadic that will happen 1 month and will not happen the next few months. And hence, one of the important learning for us when we were also doing it, and I think, like I said, pandemic also exaggerated it, is the whole presence of digital world. Because end of the day, this is the fastest, easiest, and the most comprehensible manner in which education can be imparted. Next. So, in continuing that journey, while agriculture, produce, farmers, value chain, it's reaching the factories, and hence then later reaching the consumers, and then coming back is very integral. We have a higher level commitment towards the healthier planet as well. So, in fact, very recently we were awarded #1 for the water stewardship by the Government of India itself, having the best corporate strategy around it. We have been doing this for a very long period of time, where we have been doing it for almost being able to create 7.3 percentage of livelihood, which was supported by this initiative. And continuing on that, like I said, agri and all the produce which are coming into foods are all climate sensitive. So we have to have a responsible and a sustainable plan where we need to have climate smart villages which can lead the way ahead, so that all these issues which are coming because of the climate change do not have a very drastic and negative impact in the long term. So while we do all the trainings and education, it's important for us to cover villages. And in this initiative, we've done almost 1,600 villages across 14 states and almost 2.5 lakh farmers in 8.8 lakh acres. And the numbers, of course, as you can see on the screen as well, they have actually been able to increase the yield of some of the key varieties of soya and wheat, and the returns by almost 70% to 45% for these varieties. This, for a farmer and the overall economy, is a huge impact for us and the planet at large as well. Continuing on the journey, we also look at renewable energy, and very proud to share that almost over 41% of ITC's own energy requirements are coming from renewable sources, and this journey is just begun. One of the very important factor that we all talk about is the generation of waste and how do we manage it. It is also closely linked to food loss and waste strategies which are being developed at the UN level. So we have a very unique initiative that we call as well-being out of waste, where we cover around almost 1.5 crore citizens, right? And it also has a very positive impact for almost 17,000 waste collectors, right? Very happy again to share that 99% of the total waste generated in ITC is actually either reused or recycled. One of the examples that I think we can share is something we call as a green temple initiative, where when you go to a temple, you see a lot of flowers being given, and then a lot of time they don't know what to do with it. So working with them, we figured out a plan to say that how can we actually process that part or the waste generated into biogas for the kitchen and compost for the gardens. And we've already covered almost more than 180 temples across the country. So this is one of the great initiatives. We also have other brand initiatives like EP for a Better World, which is also under our sustainability and the CSR plan about recyclability. Not only the work that has happened will continue to happen, there are some very ambitious targets that we put for ourselves in 2030. For example, sustainable agriculture practices, biodiversity conservations part, and sustainable livelihood. All three of them will have multiple projects within them, so that we can actually stand tall and deliver on the commitments to make a better planet for the coming generation. Next. While we are talking about at the ITC level, and I think given the time that we have, we may not be able to give you the entire details of it. However, from the food division perspective, we take it very seriously, and all of these thoughts have been integral to us into our core commercial strategy, right? This is not something that is being done, at a separate level. Let's do one project and forget about it. It's part of our purpose and it's part of our vision, which is help India eat better. When we say that, we actually have tangible and measurable outcomes which have a very solid impact in developing and providing affordable, accessible, and sustainable nutrition options for all people. And we have, like I was mentioning, we have a core commercial strategy which is there, which is under the gamut of nutrition nation. We have divided this further into 4 pillar model, which has its own unique sub action points. So just to give you a glimpse on that, it's our 4 pillar business model. And we have taken multiple inputs from not only the UN SDG platforms, but also our own nation's Poshan 2.0 Abhiyan. What are the deliverables? What are responsible organizations are supposed to be committing to? What are the things that have been done? And I think any strategy would not be complete if it's not going to take the full value chain. For us, what it translates to is developing a healthier product portfolio. When we say that, we basically mean we are directly responsible for providing meaningful food choices to the consumers so that they can enjoy them as a part of their diversified balanced diet, right? So like we have done a commitment to FSSAI voluntary about reducing sodium or sugar or trans fat free portfolios, which we are already working. And in fact, for some of the commitments that we have done in future, we have already achieved them, as a big milestone. We also look very, very tangibly into adding and increasing the value added portfolio, whether in terms of micronutrients, whether in terms of value added ingredients, Ayurvedic inclusions, fiber, all those things. So we all work under that, under a healthier portfolio. The second one comes for us as a sustainable food ecosystem. When we talk about that, how do we make sure that our nutritious products are actually affordable? They can be enjoyed by different strata of society, because end of the day, something like an iron fortified product is required by everyone, right? So everyone should be able to afford it. Second, they should be accessible. That means they're available through the country, especially like the aspirational district. And the last part is we should be able to provide them options which are sustainable in nature, whether they are meat replacers, whether they are coming from the fact that they are going to be biofortified, or they are coming from the value chain which is controlling food loss and waste in a certain manner of speaking. All these initiatives are also incomplete if they are not able to impact the society at large, right? That falls for us under the community health initiatives. So we work, in the deep and far corners of our country. So whether it's in Bahraich in UP, or Jharkhand in Ranchi, or Bikaner, all these places we work with the local community, the Gram Panchayat, the local medical units to provide meaningful changes in the lives and health of the people. And our key areas, focus areas on this is anemia management and reduction of indicators like malnutrition, stunting, wasting in children, which are below 5 years of age, pregnant and lactating women, in women empowerment, how to increase their financial literacy. All these work are done under our community health initiatives. And the last is, end of the day, it is very important for us that these messages are conveyed in a proper manner, both internally to our employees as well as to the consumers outside, so that they can participate and join hands with us to take this ahead. And now I think for all of them, which I've been telling you, that innovation sweet spot, where while we have the vision, they are actually at the heart of it, driven by consumer insights. So I would request Vara to please share his thoughts and points ahead on the consumer insight part. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhavna. So now there is a clear inciting framework which we follow for arriving at innovations at our division. So the earlier, like any framework that we have, there is a clear process, and then we spot trends. We continuously track the consumer sentiment. We ream through a lot of sources, whether it is through macro trends or micro trends, and then we identify clear consumer gaps, and then we create our products or portfolio offerings around that. We evaluate with the consumer, we launch it, we measure it, and again we fine tune it. This is the process that we have been continuously following. And on this area of sustainability, and we have identified 4 consumer themes that are largely at play currently in Indian market. One of which is going back to roots, seeking authenticity, purity in healthy and natural way. This is one thing that the consumers are definitely seeking. The second thing is they are also grappling with a lot of specific health issues, be it vitamin or mineral or protein deficiency, or seeking better digestive health. They are also there is a lot of growing attention or awareness towards environmental consciousness, and that is also reflecting in consumers seeking alternate proteins, and also today's millennials are also navigating towards being vegans. And so they are also very conscious about what they are consuming. Now, all these three themes are also, while they are looking at these things, there is some of the core needs of foods are at play. There is taste, convenience, affordability. These are at the heart, and consumers are not ready to compromise on any of these things while they are aspiring for the first top 3 points that I have mentioned so far. Now, in that journey, now let us see. I will be explaining about the four use cases that we are planning to present around this particular thing. So, what we have observed among the consumers is saying that a lot of consumers are saying that our ancestors have used to lead better, healthy lives. There are too many demands these days. Food that we are consuming is of not good quality. On the other hand, we are also observing a lot of conversations around millets are good. These are Indian superfoods. They are high on nutrition. They are low on cholesterol. They are also helping in good digestion and weight loss and so on and so forth. Having said that, there are also multiple pain points around that. They don't know how to cook it. They are not very tasty. There are myths around saying that they are generally the heat generating for the body. They're very localized. Like some of the millets are very, very popular in South, are not popular in North, which are popular are not popular in West, so on and so forth. Considering this trend, we have bringing all these insights together. We have come up with we have developed a proposition around Ashirwad Nature Superfood, which is leveraging the existing highly credible perceived benefits around millets. At the same time, it is a combination. We are not talking about a ragi flour or a bajra flour or just by grounding it and offering it to the consumer. We have created a combination, which is what we call it as multi-millet mix, which is a combination of ragi, bajra, jowar, quinoa, and foxtail millet. And it is a combination that you can directly use. You can make a dosa out of it. You can make a roti out of it, kind of a thing. You can add into a batter that you are making. It is extremely easy to use, and it is excellent to taste as well. So this is one use case in which we have tried to utilize the consumer insighting, wherein we have come up with a proposition. In the second case, there is a lot of awareness in this entire angle of digestive health. Nearly 35% of the households in Kolkata reported symptoms of lactose intolerance. Now, this specific case we have developed and we have launched, and currently it is only available in Kolkata. That's the way the business is spanned out. But there are a lot of unarticulated issues around digestion that we observe in that region. So lactose intolerance is prevalent in all age groups. It leads to stopping milk consumption and therefore leading to deficiency in calcium and vitamin. Majority of the people are not even aware that there is a problem with lactose intolerance. So we have come up with an option which is accessible, affordable, fast, easy to digest lactose-free milk in the pouch format. And we have just launched it, and it is already gaining a lot of traction among the consumers. But having said that, this journey is yet we have to educate the consumer to make them realize, saying that there is something called a concept of lactose intolerance. And if you have that, you may not be able to digest freely or easily the normal dairy products. So this is one such other intervention that has come out of the consumer inciting work at our end. The next area is also about identification of various juices. So we are into the beverages business for quite some time now. And we also have realized saying that there is a lot of apprehensions among the consumers saying that there is nutrition loss during the juice making process. There is a lot of sugar in it. There is a lot of preservatives in it. Therefore, we should not be consuming the juices. Now, we have also been cognizant of these voices that are coming out of the consumers. And there are two aspects that it has boiled down to: reducing the perceived consumer barriers around nutrition loss that is happening during the juice making process. At the same time, enhancing the nutritional quotient of the juices that we are, or the beverages that we are offering. So in collaboration with Amway, we have developed three different offerings: Be Natural Neutralite Mixed Fruit Juice, Be Natural Neutralite ABC Juice. We have also Sunfished Protein Milkshake, which directly gives 18 grams of protein per day. So these are the, and we have done a lot of fortification. It contains 21 vitamins. It has 25,000 calories per 100 ml when I'm talking about the ABC juice. And we also have protein milkshake by Nutrilite, wherein it is enriched with protein. Now, in doing so, we are also have taken care of not having sugar, not having added preservatives, and also added a lot of ingredients that will naturally do good to the consumer. At the same time, we haven't compromised on the taste, and they are thick. Therefore, the consumers also perceive them to be very, very nutritional. The next one is, while we are preparing ourselves, looking at the consumers on all these three dimensions of going back to the roots, nutritional deficiencies, digestive health, the last one, we are also preparing ourselves for the future. We are seeing a lot of conversations from the consumers happening around alternate proteins. Why? Because their health and nutrition, because it is animal welfare is one of the reason. Environmental consciousness is the second reason. There is a lot of pressure on the earth in terms of giving high quality protein, and there is also a lot of apprehensions around the kind of meat and the quality of meat that is available. So this, and also on the other hand, there a lot of millennials are moving towards navigating towards environmental friendly products, and that is leading to a higher demand for alternate proteins, and that alternate protein area is an emerging space in India. And we are also through our flagship ITC MasterChef brand, we have just recently launched plant-based incredible nuggets as well as incredible burger patty. These are the first time, and we are trying to understand, because this space as such is very, very prevalent in the Western world and in US, but in India it is at a very nascent stage. We are trying to build, we are trying to optimize it for the Indian taste, at the same time make it affordable for the Indians. There is a lot of work happening around that as well. To summarize, we are looking at macro trends and also, of course, the micro consumer pain points, and then we are trying to craft business or product portfolio around that. And just to, in a nutshell, beat our leveraging on the going back to the roots, we have developed Ashirwad Nature Superfood Multimillets millet. Multi-millet mix, sorry for that. And then we also growing concern around the indigestion and the lack of knowledge around lactose intolerance. We have, for the first time, we have come up with Ashirwad Swasti Easy Digest Milk. Again, we haven't called lactose intolerance because lactose intolerance as a word is not understood by the consumer. So therefore, we have named it so that consumers can understand it appropriately. We have also come up with fresh fruit juices which are being added back, which are thicker in nature, where is a fiber added back to it, and they're also fortified with a lot of vitamins and minerals which will do good to the consumer. And finally, we are also being prepared ourselves for the alternate protein space. And India is a huge country. There is a huge demand, and there is a lot of deficiency around protein among the vegetarian consumers that this country has. And also leveraging the millennial trend of veganism, we are also being preparing ourselves around that area. And that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Team ITC. Great work. Do we have Vara as well?
Yep.
Hi, team. So, very insightful and a lot to think about it. But the global population has increased by nearly 200% in the last 70 years. Are we really able to keep up with the rise of the population, with all the trends that you've mentioned, with our consumer being better informed and educated? Now they know about macros. We know about milk intolerance, as you mentioned, and our grandparents, they didn't have that problem, and suddenly we have this. How do we deal with that? Are we really able to keep up with the trends and with the rise in the population? Are we actually helping?
See, some of these aspects, how we are helping is, there are two ways a marketer can help. A marketer can help by creating awareness or by creating a product. Now, by creating a product, we are also willy-nilly, sometimes we attempt to create awareness. Sometimes it works, sometimes it does not work, because there are multiple factors at play once you put it in the market. versus what you have observed in closed groups or through your inciting framework and all that stuff. So there is a constant process of nudging the consumer towards the right habits or the right education towards what to have and what not to have. So our approach has been on this particular thing has been, whatever be the product category, if we are trying to observe the consumer and the pain points, and if we start nudging them towards the right habits of right consuming the right kind of products, then the job is done. And in doing so, we are also making them aware. Like, for example, a very simple thing of easy digest milk, we are making them aware that some of the digestive problems are not because there is something wrong with your stomach. There is something that you are not able to tolerate. Now, that awareness is not prevalent while the science and technology and the medical field has gone to a very different order. But this awareness among the consumers do not exist. So it is a process which is a little long haul, and we are trying to address and create products around that to just cater and therefore nudge the consumers. We cannot make a 180-degree shift in one day. It has to happen slowly. Maybe it was a generation back, people were looking for tastier products, convenient offers, and everyone has reaped the benefit of that trend. Now the consumers are saying that I need something good, sustainable, good for my health, good for my planet. Now you have to nudge the consumer in that direction. So I think it is a consistent and a constant journey that we have to go through. And therefore you need to be at it, create the product, create the right awareness and narrative for the consumer so that we can make that nudge happen.
If I'm audible enough, so I just want to add one more point to it. We have to look at the complete value chain. So when you're asking that question, so there is a whole aspect of the whole way consumer looks at it. And then the whole aspect of the agri value chain, which is able to also provide it to begin with, right? So whether if you look at the back end from things like ancient grains, which are millets coming up because they actually use lesser water and they are highly nutritious and people have been used to taking it in different formats, they actually add up in a certain manner of speaking to the value chain where the entire thing is taken care of. And hence you can actually feed a lot more people in the same small area of growing that crop. That is one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is that if you also have biofortified crops, so the same wheat and the same millet can actually have iron and zinc. So when you talk about the UN SDG framework, the first three goals are talking about, suppose, anemia management, decreasing stunting and wasting and all those things. You will have to make sure that the current space that you have for growing certain things are still adding more value even as the population grows up. So that's very important. So we at the back end also track those things from a science and an R&D perspective, and we link it to the consumer trend. So some of them will happen immediately, some of them may happen after 2 years, but I think they will have to be seen together. Otherwise it might just happen as just one launch or just taking care of one trend. They may come and go as well. So it has to be a long-term project for certain things. And for some, like Vara was rightly saying, we'll have to just increase awareness, get people talking about it, because that will also indirectly, nudge the R&D folks to, have more sustainable options coming out of it.
You're talking about awareness, but how easy is to reach or to educate people deep in villages or maybe at the poverty level? Is that easy to reach and educate them? As easy as urban people? It's probably easier for us to know about new products, new trends, what is sustainable nutrition, what is macros. But what about people in the villages?
So I'll take that one, Vara, and then you add. So we actually are doing a lot of programs around the similar thing we were talking about in the core heart of India, in the villages, right? And you will be surprised to know that, when you actually go and talk to them, the one part is, of course, maybe their knowledge level is not going to be that high.
but their trust levels are very high. So if you actually go and tell, I'll give you a very small example. So we were tracking a project which is about, anemia, suppose, in pregnant women in one part of the country. And we went there and we were talking about that to say that, did you know the green leaves that you're growing just behind like a kitchen garden thing is actually good for you? And they said, we didn't know that. So they just need somebody to come and tell them to begin with. Second, they need somebody to come and connect them to the right organizations or the right schemes which are run by the government. And third, they definitely thrive on a lot of myths and misconceptions. So for example, if you just give them a normal salt which has both iodine and iron, it will end up having some red specks. What you have to just tell them in fact, if it has red specks, it's good for you because it's probably has iron and it's good for you. So don't worry about it. They just need that assurance. One of the biggest factor for them is affordability of those options, right? So it could be a very good thing for them, but if it's not affordable and it's not available in a long sustainable manner, that's probably not going to live very long. And hence we have to be very careful. So even when we do our work, we have three verticals which are very clearly talking about it at the back end. There's a core product launches which are happening from trends and insights perspective. There's a sustainability angle which is happening from affordability and accessibility, sitting on the insight, of course. And the third is the whole public health CSR kind of initiatives, where they are done in accordance to probably something which is required by our nation, by the people which are established. So I think it does not have a very like a black and white answer, but it does take a lot of effort during the planning stage of a project and the communication development of it to say that how should we actually reach them. So I think maybe like a vegan thing may not get picked up so fast because they may not even feel the importance of it, or they may not even think that it's required for them. And if they have some the cows and the buffaloes right in the backyard, they said don't take the only source of protein we have. Versus if you just tell them about you have a fortified cereal and it's good for your child, they would very readily absorb and accept it. So everything has to be curated and has to be done like that.
So you also mentioned about partners. Who are normally your partners that join this ecosystem? So everyone looks at the government because it's easier. You get easy way of doing things around. But who else? What is the profile of partners that joining this ecosystem?
So these partnerships will be centered around depending on the project. So for example, if it's something like a public health initiative, it is actually important to take care of the entire ecosystem that is sitting at the ground level. So you will have to have the local medical community so that their health part is taken care of. You have to take care of the heads of the villages, for example, the community people. You need to have to develop the local leaders. And in a lot of times, they have figured out that the women leaders are actually very good for that. Because they are the best people because they take care of their family. So empowering them, it's actually a much better thing. So like, for example, that be the ecosystem, of course, in alignment with the local government, so that they are in sync and they should not get two separate messages, right? Maybe some part of it could even come from, like, we work very closely with global partners in nutrition, for example, Path, Gates Foundation, all, Harvest Plus, when we things like that, policymakers. So this would comprise something when we're trying to work on the community health initiatives, deep. If we have working on something like affordability and accessibility, then we have to understand how the market dynamic works. Looking at our own selves, how do we place our products, the supply chain, the marketing of it? How does the industry work for that particular thing? And then, of course, taking care of the whole, consumer part of it. So I think where Vara can add up on the fact that who are our partners when we talk about from the consumer perspective. But like I said, it all gets decided and is brought to life depending on each unique project. Otherwise, the whole purpose may get defeated, right? So choosing the right partner is very critical, because there are a lot of times we have realized that we have a better access and believability, but for a lot of projects, it's better that the other people take the lead because they're more trusted, or they have more impact or accessibility for certain things, especially like in public health. So depending on that, maybe Vara, you can on the partners that you take up for the consumer insight part for these projects that we do.
So from essentially the partners are in the consumer insights, there are two aspects. In identifying the insight, there are partners. And when you are marketing it or launching, then you are also having partners, because creating awareness is also a very critical job in the through journey. Of course, it comes as marketing partners. Like for example, if you are having these days, it's not about only one is on at a ground level, whether you want to talk about the head of the village or something like that. That is the conventional, very ground up way. But now the partners are also digital partners who have an ecosystem, who have a certain set of consumer base, saying that I have a base of mothers and kids, or mothers with kids, kind of a thing. So then you go and tie up with them, and you influence them, you create a narrative, you make them understand, saying that this kind of problems tend to happen. So there are the biggest advantage with entire digital happening is there is a social commerce angle coming in. While you ignore the commerce part of it for a minute, there are these kind of social small cohorts or groups that are available for us to go and access, do a small experiment, understand them, fine tune your offer, then again further create that awareness and bring it to the masses in an appropriate manner. So there are more those kind of online partners that you will be also working with, not only from an insight creation, which is generally what you all are aware of, but there is also a journey that we take along with the other partners who will help us in terms of doing A/B testing, fine tuning, making it appropriate, then take it to the consumer and make it a more impactful.
And the key word is sustainability. Is there any specific criteria or eligibility? I mean, is the project that you're driving different than just a classic nutrition project rather than sustainable nutrition? So the keyword is sustainable. Please
Yes.
Tell us the difference.
So the difference would be, I'll give one example. So for us, the starting point is that you've given a very beautiful framework, right? Which is with the 17 SDGs. 16 are anyways quantified, and the 17th is the qualitative one. So when we do the drill down, each country has been given their own targets to achieve for 2030, right? And when I look at my country's target and the sub-targets, and then I start looking it from the perspective of what are the requirements up there, where is the gap, which are the states, what is the kind of, those things are there. And then we do a back math to say that, okay, for the goal number, for example, 2, right, where we talk about zero hunger, one of the biggest thing is about management of stunting and wasting in children, which is especially under 5, or you can take anemia in adolescent young girls, right? So we have used that insight and the number. So that's a starting point, because we believe whatever we try to do, whether it's marketing, whether it's under sustainability, whether it's under CSR, whatever it is, end of the day, they are impacting this number. And it is our responsibility as an organization to help not only the state, but the country, but the world at large, to minimize that gap, right? See, and there are enough and more numbers and data sets, like Global Nutrition Report is there, which also gives it. SDG itself gives this own target to say that we have to reduce it. And at a lot of places, you actually have to half it. And there are already predictions coming in that it's not going to be that easy, right? And in fact, we have to really do the efforts double. So when we have that kind of numbers and we sit together as a team, we realize that this particular product that needs to be developed has the potential to suppose add iron into it and folic acid to it, right? Then we combine it with the consumer insight part of it to say that, do consumers also need it? Is this format working for them? Like, for example, would an adolescent young girl actually even consume this product if I make it? They may not be drinking milk and a milk powder thing, but they can have a cool RTD in a can. So that's where the marketing and the insight comes in to say that while you're solving the anemia for adolescent young girls, I will give you the coolest format so that they don't refuse it. So that's how it comes together. The normal project could be something about, okay, there's a trend which is coming, let's just do that. It may or may not have a connect with my higher number target of the SDG sometimes, right? So for example, when we do the vegan thing, it connects to maybe not the first three, but it actually connects to the SDG number 12, which is responsible consumption and production, right? So in one of those targets, it gets placed to say that, yes, are we positively impacting any one of those targets? And yes, it can be placed credibly under that. There could be some products which could be just from the perspective of, okay, let's try to just catch this thought and let's see how consumers react. So we do that mapping at the back end. We also disclose this as a part of our annual sustainability reports, which are available on our websites under the pillar model, like I shared. And all of this is taken at a very high level of even management for that perspective, by the senior leadership team, where the commitments are done very credibly under each SDG. And some of the commercial launches will be like, if they help, that's fine. If they don't, they could be
I
taken
think we
as like,
lost.
healthy indulgences or things like that.
Thank you. Vara, anything to add?
No, nothing. I think she covered it pretty exhaustively. But the only one linkage that also is important is saying that while there are ESG and sustainable goals, there are also some things that as a corporate, and picking up from yesterday's discussion, there is an enterprise level work, and it has to somewhere link to the brand and the marketing objectives of the brand, and then to the consumer. So that linkages are also very critical. While there is a lot of developmental work that happens, that is not the end goal. We don't exist for that. We also have to be responsible in getting that. So how do you manifest that in our day-to-day thing is also a constant stream that we also look at it. So when we are launching something, we obviously it is on a consumer insight, or it is on a brand objective, but it also has to consider what is the overall narrative around that aspect, and in the market around the sustainability, whether this solution is a good solution to the consumer or not, very sustainable solution or not. I think those are also becoming increasingly some checklists that we are also considering, and we are developing, keeping those things into account. So that is one additional dimension, because at the end of the day, that objectivity has to percolate down. While that can also independently exist because of a different reason, from organization to organization, this entire connection can be very different. But for us, we start from this way as well, we start from that way, and sometimes we arrive at that sweet spot in a nice manner.
Understood. Thank you so much for your time. Great work. It's a lot of work, but keep it up.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, team.
Thanks, bye.
So without further delay, we are moving to the last session for today, part of the series.
Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon the location you are logging in from. My name is Chandan. I'm the CMI PDC Director for South Asia and National CMI Director for Sri Lanka, working with Unilever. Along with me is Chavi. She's the Senior CMI PDC Manager for South Asia. We both are working with Unilever. And today we are going to talk about one of our marquee initiatives, which is called Suvidha Centers. Suvidha, the word in Hindi, which basically means facilities, and it's a self-sustainable sanitation solution for urban slums of India. Now, I know a lot of you have been logging in from places outside India. So let me first give you a bit of a context for the country. In India, we've got a huge population of close to 1.4 billion people. In fact, by 2030, our population is expected to grow to 1.5 billion, and around 40% of the population will be living in rural. Now, unfortunately, when such a huge pace of urbanization happens, it also comes with an unfortunate part, which is your facilities might not grow at the same pace at which your population is urbanizing. Even today, more than 200 million people unfortunately lack access to improved sanitization. And I'm not very proud to say that we are a country with the longest toilet queues. Close to 100 million people in urban live in slums, which basically means there are 15% of people who are still practicing open defecation. A lot of people, as high as 6% people, lack access to basic stuff like safe water. These things, of course, have a impact on our GDP as well. Unfortunately, we've got a toilet seat per 190 users, which is much higher against the WHO norms, which is one toilet per 50 people. Now, these are some staggering numbers and they have hidden dangers. Now, first one is very obvious that when people, unfortunately, it's more of women that bears the burden of fetching water, but whoever is doing that is waste a lot of time standing in queues. It means they have much lesser time available for doing any productive activity, whether it is education, employment, even childcare. And a poor hygiene will lead to a lot of health issues, basic like diarrhea or any other water diseases, or it can be some more serious infections and fetal also in some cases. Now, COVID-19 has anyways highlighted the urgency of improving sanitation and hygiene in big cities, and we know that it's a big ask. We have to work on it. In fact, Mumbai hosts one of the biggest slums, the biggest of Asia, called Dharavi. So it's a huge problem for us. We also know from proven research that when we have proper sanitation, there is a huge impact of that on health and well-being. It ensures that medical issues or medical illness are much lesser. It helps saving lives of people under 5 years. It also ensures that women especially, they have higher dignity, they have higher level of safety, and if done properly, there is also an opportunity of recovery of water. So there are proven impact, positive impact of having a health and well-being. Now, looking at the context of India, how people are living there. So there are, they're living in most people in slums are living in one room sets. They don't have toilets and they use community toilets. Community toilets typically are not very clean. They lack basic amenities. They are dirty. They are stinking. And that's why people are, doing open defecation and stuff like that. It then leads to a lot of problem. The hygiene levels are very low. There are medical issues. So there are some serious issues. And that is when HUL decided to launch something called as Suvidha Center, which we launched the first of its kind in Mumbai. We started in Mumbai, and Suvidha centers are nothing but basically it's a center. As I said, Suvidha means facilities. It's a facility center which we started in India. I'm going to request my colleague Chavi to talk about Suvidha and explain all of us what Suvidha centers really is.
Thanks, Chandan. Thanks, Chandan. Yeah, let me now speak about, how we went about, setting up these Suvidha centers. Moving on to the next slide. So Suvidha actually was conceptualized by HUL in 2016. And the vision behind was, sustainable and hygiene living should be accessible and affordable to people. When we talk about sustainable community center, we actually met consumers to understand the pain points that they currently have in these urban slums. And we clearly understood that sanitation, hygiene, drinking water, and laundry needs are something that needs a solution for. And with that in mind, we conceptualize Suvidha centers. And While we were making that, we wanted to ensure that it is a sustainable model and hence water positive. And all together then came together to make Suvidha Center. Moving on to the next slide. As I said, we did have a completely human-centric approach while designing these centers. So laundromats, water ATM service, water recyclable facilities were provided in addition to, the loo, etc. that was built in these facilities. We wanted to be completely inclusive because a lot of places we realized that these current community centers, men would generally go, but the woman or the child in the house would struggle to go and visit those centers, and hence these toilets were also, envisioned with complete security and safety with well-lit conditions at night, panic button installed, CCTV cameras in place, and there was also a special toilet for people with disability. Moving on to the next slide. And the whole complete approach was required for it because just building the facility was not enough. It required a behavior change, and for that, we needed to educate consumers, have a community ownership, have a self-sustained model, and all together was our approach to Suvidha. Moving on to the next slide. Yes. So the meaningful changes that we did with Suvidha was activating community engagement programs. So there were series of programs, home to home, school contact programs, health post checkup needs, doctor contact programs. We tied up with Anganwadi workers to again dial up the need and tell consumers. In fact, HUL came up with the plan of Hath Muh Bum, Bimari Hogi Kam, and which actually means that if you keep your hands clean, if your mouth is clean, and your defecation facilities where you go to the loo, all that is clean, then you will have lesser incidence of diseases. So with all that, education was provided to the community. Moving on to the next slide. Yeah, these pictures just show, the various programs we conducted, and we really realized that, once they started using Suvidha centers, it had a lot of impact. 35% of them reported drinking clean and purified water. 100% hand washing post defecation was observed because of the education and the behavior change program that we had. Moving on to the next slide. This is basically the crux of the kind of transformation Suvidha Center has been able to bring about in these urban settlements. 2 lakh people have access to clean and hygienic toilets every year. 99% users reported that toilets are clean and hygienic on all days. 9 in 10 users find Suvidha easy to access and inclusive. 7 in 10 users believe that using Suvidha has improved their self-esteem because now they have a clean place to go to. 1.4 times reduction in incidence of diarrhea on using Suvidhas. So this is the kind of impact it brought alive in consumers' life, and on top of it, it also saves water because of the recycling and the treatment of water. Moving on to the next slide. This is just, few consumer speaks, what they have to talk about. We have been able to touch lives, and that is evident from how consumers actually play back to us and even the government because of the initiatives we have taken. Moving on to the next slide. Yeah. And in addition to, there was some direct impact that we were expecting, but there was some additional outcomes which are slightly unexpected initially. Because of the entire education program, because of a facility coming in, it had cleaner neighborhoods now. There were reduced antisocial elements due to well-lit Suvidha centers. There was enough lighting at night as well. There was a sense of oneness within the community because they knew that is the place to go to. And hence, we could touch much more life. In fact, it brought alive other additional outcomes like gender equality because now both the men and the female could go and use the facilities. Moving on to the next slide. Yes, and then what lies ahead for Suvidha? That's the plan I will request Chandan to disclose to you.
Thank you, Chavi. So Wow, it is, I'm sure you guys are, inspired by what Suvidha has landed in terms of, the impact that it's creating and of course making India proud. Now we've done that, we've tasted the blood and we really want to go ahead, and scale it up. So of course we want to scale it up through collaborations. We need to partner with the government, with different kinds of organizations. We are also encouraging a lot of entrepreneurs to come together and to do this. We've realized that it's a huge opportunity. HUL alone will not be able to suffice it, but we've seen a lot of traction amongst partners who are wanting to collaborate and work. We've already, expanded number of Suvidha centers to 7 as of date, and our ambition is much more. So we are, as Chavi also said, we are able to give clear sanitation opportunities to around 200,000 people. We want to increase that to 500,000 people. So we want to be able to give clean access to clean and safe sanitation to 500,000 people, which we will do by increasing our number of centers from 7 to 25. In fact, we recently had um, our biggest center launched at Dharavi, which is also the biggest slum of Asia, and we plan to launch more centers in Dharavi to cater that. We want to increase number of centers to 25, and we've already identified a location of 10 centers. As Chavi mentioned, we've been able to save around 35 million liters of water every year, and our ambition is to take this number to 1 billion liters water saving in a decade. So that's a huge ambition, but we are very sure that we will be able to do it. At Unilever, our purpose is to make sustainable living commonplace, and this is one of the initiatives that ensures that we are very much on the path of our purpose. That's I would say a very short overview of what Suvidha is for you, and I hope you guys are inspired. So thank you very much for listening. This was me, Chandan Agarwal, and Chavi presenting to you. Thank you.
Thank you, HUL team. Chandan, we have you with us.
Yes, I have Chavi also.
Hi, Chavi. Hi, Chandan. Good to see you.
Hi.
We have a question. What are the unique points working on sustainable project compared to regular project that you would normally do at HUL?
Unique points, how do you define unique points? Sorry.
What is
What
so
are the
different
unique
about
points?
this project? What are the unique points working on sustainability type of projects rather than a normal one? Did you require different skills? Did you require to join a different set of partners?
So yes and no. And the reason I say yes and no is because from a research point of view, your basics of research don't change. However, working with Unilever, we are very much, accustomed to going to one kind of a TG, doing some standard researches that we do. And when you do a research, which is a slightly different research, this, for example, then you have to think differently. You have to think. We otherwise typically won't do a research, going in Dharavi, trying to understand people's problem and all. So there needs to be a very different approach to understand the issues. You will not really get an issue just by asking them, because as I said, in the presentation, when we established Suvidha as a center, just establishing it was not enough. You also had to do the behavior change, because which means if you go and ask them that, what is the problem, probably in the first 3 or 4 problem list, sanitation will not even occur to them. So that is not even a problem that they will call out. You have to identify it through different areas. So of course, the techniques and the way you will identify the issues have to be very different.
I'm not sure if it's a natural question, but how easy was it for you? Because there are different types of consumer.
Yeah, so it was. change is always difficult. You know that, right? So you tell me that you have to do a standard research to understand triggers and barriers, or do do a driver analysis and all, which is something that is a day job. Or for me in PDC, doing something on social analytics, I can write the brief and run the brief while sleeping. But doing something like this, of course, needs us to put our thinking hat. And sometimes we deliver, sometimes we always learn, or we also learn. So it is. I would actually say that it's more interesting than anything else. But going back to home, knowing that you've done something which is going to have a substantial impact on the lives of people, that gives you a feeling that it was worth it.
So have you had some unexpected results or reactions, or maybe even anecdotal, some funny reaction as well? Because I understand that people are always grateful when they get something, especially basic. What is basic for us may not be basic for them. As you mentioned, they didn't even say about it. But were there situations when it was actually funny?
Yeah, I can share an example. Do you want to share something, Anjali?
Yeah, sure. So I think, when you meet different types of people, you'll realize that their current situations might be different. So if you were using some, say, community toilets already, but they then narrated some instances that how then they went, it was not cleaned, how they have survived, how this has brought really a change. Sometimes it's going to be funny also. For example, we also installed a laundromat. There were people who were using laundry machine for the first time, and then when they narrated the instance of understanding the process. So there were both, kind of experiences. But what we were at the end of the day delighted to know were, the overall feedback has been positive, and we kept on seeing the learnings that were coming through, whether the monthly passes or the weekly passes. So all those small nuances also we kept on picking on the way to improvise on the plan, because we realized this is not our strength. This is something we are building on.
There's one more thing which I would just like to add. One of the experience, interesting one. So, I always tell people that we don't necessarily represent India, right? India is a large country, and we have people from different ethnic groups, different socioeconomic classes, and all. So I was doing an ethnography with with people from, I would say, lower LSM or lower SEC group, and I realized how different or how difficult their life is. And beyond a point, the lady who was talking to me, and then she was interrupted by her mother-in-law, and they both were only interested to understand that, that I'm going to get a lot of insights from them, and what are they going to get in return from me. So it eventually boiled down to a point that her mother-in-law, the lady who was talking to her mother-in-law, came and she said that, first you pay, otherwise I will not let you talk to my my daughter-in-law anymore. So different experiences, and then you learn, how do you navigate in these kind of scenarios.
We received a question from one of our attendees. Are you planning to expand to other locations, cities?
So current plan is actually for Mumbai, because a lot of this has been done in tie-up with the government. So here we already have we've proven the model to BMC. We have a lot of approvals. So first we are expanding in Mumbai. So we had Ghatkopar Center and Dairy Center. In Jan, we opened our first Dharavi. Within Dharavi, our plan is to open, say, 5 more, because it is the biggest slum. And then do a few more in Mumbai before expanding to other.
I would just say that, why not? And it's more about, so we don't have a very fixed plan here. It's more about, being agile and looking for partners. We've been able to crack a model for Mumbai. We know that there are other cities, other metros that are also in need. So if we get, a partner, somebody who's willing to collaborate, then we will have all arms open. So for instance, if somebody comes and, says that, HUL, are you willing to partner to open a Suvidha center in Kolkata? I'm 100% sure we will be more than happy to do that.
The intent to expand, of course, is there.
There is no eligibility criteria, Diana. It's something which is, we see, what does it take, because eventually we need permission from the government to use the land, a bit of a finances to, kind of create the facility, and then, understanding of how we will run the facilities, right? And all the amenities and all are provided by HUL. So the HUL does invest, but then we also look at people who can, share the load in terms of collaboration and do that. Yeah.
How much time normally takes to set up a center?
It would be, eventually, if you think about it, if you start from the scratch, it's, on a barren land, it's a concrete structure. So any concrete structure you make will take at least 6 to 9 months, and then you put all amenities. So I would like to believe end to end it'll take around a year from the scratch. But if you have an existing building that you have to repurpose, then probably a quarter will suffice.
Got it. So I guess no more questions from the audience. I think we answered all the questions that we had. Thank you so much for the great work. It takes, I know, lots of support and lots of efforts and time, but I think it's worth. So if you would give an advice to anyone that would like to do what you do, what would be that?
I think it's great to do something for the society, because I think society has given a lot to us, and it's our moral duty to return back some bit of it and leave a better tomorrow for the next generation. So if you have an intent to do it, don't be shy, don't be afraid. Believe me, it's everything is round. The more you give, the more you will get back. So go for it.
Awesome advice. Thank you. I guess it's valid for all our sectors in our life. It's not only for this one, sanitation and so on. Thank you so much, team. With this was the last presentation that we had. We hope that our audience could extract some learning, some advices, some good insights. With this, we say goodbye, and we hope we'll continue the series, not only just because with the occasion of Market Research International Day, the celebration, but it should be an ongoing activity and drive and initiatives. So keep up the good work. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Diana. You have a great evening. Bye.